Scientists at the Panoramic Survey Telescope and Rapid Response System were the first to see it, a decimal point that simply refused to round down. Picture this. It is 3 o'clock in the morning on July 14th, 2025. While the rest of the world is tucked under cotton sheets, dreaming of mortgage payments and summer vacations, a high-altitude sensor in the Chilean Andes quietly registers a heartbeat where there should only be a void. This is the moment 3I Atlas officially entered our reality. It did not arrive with a roar or a flash of light. They did not call the press. They did not tweet. They simply looked at the screen, looked at each other, and realized that the textbooks on orbital mechanics had just become historical fiction. Consider the timing of the National Reconnaissance Office's budget request in August of 2025. They asked for an additional $12 billion for unspecified domain awareness. $12 billion is a lot of money for a quiet year in space. You might think this is just standard government bloat, but here is why you are wrong. That funding was approved in less than 48 hours. In Washington, 48 hours is barely enough time to order lunch, let alone move $12 billion. Unfortunate timing for the taxpayer, perhaps. Those two words, unspecified domain, are doing a lot of work there. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. 3I Atlas is currently sitting in a Lagrange point, a pocket of gravitational stability, but it is moving against the solar wind. That is not natural physics. That is activation. Imagine a leaf on a pond swimming upstream against the current. You would assume there is a motor under the leaf. Now, imagine that leaf is the size of a city block and made of a material that reflects 0% of the radar waves we hit it with. Scientists like Avi Loeb at Harvard have been careful to frame this as a statistical possibility of an artificial origin, but the data suggests we are well past possibilities. We are looking at a deliberate presence. What if the increase in surveillance funding isn't about protecting our satellites from 3I Atlas? What if the funding is actually a subscription fee? A frantic attempt to build a translation layer before the object decides to speak louder. There is a specific kind of dread that comes when the smartest people in the room start whispering. If you look back at the Sumerian cylinder seals from 3,500 years before the Common Era, there is a recurring motif of a winged disk that does not represent the sun. It is depicted as a physical weight in the sky, a tether between the heavens and the earth. The ancient texts call it the Eye of the Watcher. It supposedly appears every time humanity reaches a certain threshold of noise. We have become very noisy in the last century. Radio waves, microwave bursts, the constant chatter of 8 billion souls. Perhaps we finally turned the porch light on, and something in the deep woods noticed. You are lying there now, perhaps feeling the weight of your own gravity. It is a comforting thought, isn't it, that we are the masters of our own little blue marble. But you have to wonder about the scale of it all. If 3I Atlas is indeed a stationary observer, our entire history, the rise and fall of Rome, the Industrial Revolution, your own birth has been nothing more than a few seconds of footage in a very long documentary being filmed from a high Earth orbit. We are a very young species, and we are finally being measured. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. We have spent decades worrying about a signal from a distant star system, never imagining the signal was already here, waiting for us to develop the sensors sharp enough to see it. We may already be part of the experiment, but that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The second act of this mystery began on October 29th, 2025. That was the day the European Space Agency recorded a localized distortion in the cosmic microwave background radiation directly behind 3I Atlas. It was as if the object was bending the very leftovers of the Big Bang to hide its own shadow. This isn't just stealth technology. This is fundamental physics being treated like a suggestion. When you look at the cosmic microwave background, you are looking at the oldest light in the universe. It is the afterglow of creation itself, a uniform radiation that fills every corner of the sky. To distort it requires a mass or an energy field so intense that it shouldn't just be visible, it should be screaming. But 3I Atlas is silent. It is a ghost in the machine of the cosmos, manipulating the ancient fires of the beginning to ensure its presence remains a secret to those who only look with their eyes. Consider for a moment the sheer audacity of such a feat. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University recently published a paper that was retracted within 6 hours of appearing online. In it, she argued that the mass of 3I Atlas is fluctuating in a way that defies every known law of gravity. 1 hour it weighs as much as a small moon, and the next, it is as light as a feather. This violates the law of conservation of mass, unless, of course, the object isn't entirely in our dimension. Imagine a finger dipping into a glass of water. To the microbes in the water, the finger is a giant, shifting mass that appears out of nowhere, changing size and shape as it moves. To the person, it's just a finger. We are the microbes, and 3I Atlas is the finger, poking through the veil of our three-dimensional reality. It is a heavy thought, literally. Unfortunate timing for the physics department. Those textbooks are doing a lot of heavy lifting for a reality that no longer supports them. What if the reason for the silence isn't a cover-up, but a lack of vocabulary? How do you tell a population that the object in the sky is actually a mirror, reflecting a version of Earth that hasn't happened yet? The cognitive dissonance is enough to keep anyone awake. You might think that if there was a giant, dimension-shifting object in orbit, someone would have leaked a photo by now. But here's why you're wrong. The images exist. They just don't look like anything our brains can process. They look like static. They look like a headache. Our visual cortex is evolved to see predators in the grass and fruit in the trees. It is not designed to interpret a non-Euclidean structure that exists in 6 dimensions simultaneously. When we look at 3I Atlas through a telescope, our brains simply refuse to render the data. We see a blur. We see a void. We see what we are capable of seeing, which is almost nothing at all. By November 3rd, 2025, the funding for orbital reconstruction had tripled again. The money is flowing into deep-sea cable networks and underground data centers. You have to wonder why you need to go underground to study something in the sky. Perhaps it's because the atmosphere is becoming too noisy. Or perhaps it's because the ground is the only place where the sensors don't vibrate when the object breathes. There is a specific frequency, 42 Hz, that has begun to resonate in the bedrock of the northern hemisphere. It is a low, constant thrum. If you live in a quiet area, away from the city, you might have felt it in your feet as you lay in bed. It isn't a machine. It isn't an earthquake. It is a signature. In the year 964, the Persian astronomer Abd al-Rahman al-Sufi noted a small cloud in a part of the sky that should have been empty. He called it the Gasak, or the darkening. For 3 nights, it stayed perfectly still while the stars moved behind it. Then, it vanished for 1,000 years. It is a curious coincidence that the coordinates Al-Sufi recorded match the orbital plane 3I Atlas, occupied in September of 2025. We are not seeing something new. We are seeing something that has finished its nap. The return of the Gasak suggests that the object has a schedule. It doesn't care about our empires or our calendars. It operates on a cycle of 3,600 years. We are just the current tenants of the observation deck. You might think that if there was a threat, the military would be launching missiles. But here is the dry irony of the situation. You cannot shoot a shadow. When the United States Space Force attempted a passive radar sweep on November 12th, the signal didn't bounce back. It was recorded as having arrived at its destination before it was even sent. That is not a malfunction. That is a temporal anomaly. 3I Atlas is not just moving through space. It is sitting on top of time. It is a needle on a record, and we are the music being played beneath it. As you lie there, where is the moon in your sky? Is it rising over a city or setting over a desert? Tell me the time in your part of the world. It's strange, isn't it, that we are all under the same ceiling, yet we see such different parts of the dark. Share your thoughts in the comments. Are you awake because you want to be, or because the air feels heavier tonight? Many people are reporting a sense of cosmic pressure, a feeling that the room is slightly smaller than it was yesterday. It is a gentle weight, a gravity-weighted lullaby. Let me back up for a moment. Let's talk about the Voyager missions. In 1977, we sent a golden record into the void, hoping someone would hear our music and know we existed. In November of 2025, Voyager 1 sent back a series of pulses that were not part of its programming. The pulses were a mirror image of the golden record's contents, but played in reverse. It was as if something had intercepted the message, read it, and sent back a receipt. The receipt was dated July 2025, the day Atlas was found. We didn't find the object. It let itself be found. The scale of this should make you feel very small, but in a way that is oddly peaceful. If there is a power capable of ignoring the laws of physics, then our human problems, the deadlines, the debts, the small anxieties of the day, are truly insignificant. We are drifting on a raft in the middle of a cosmic ocean, and we have just realized that the ocean has a floor, and on that floor, something is breathing. The government knows this. The increased funding isn't for defense, it's for documentation. We are building a library for a species that hasn't arrived yet, so they can see how we handled the moment the lights went out. What if 3I Atlas is a great filter that we are currently passing through? Most civilizations, perhaps, see the object and panic. They burn their world down in a fit of existential terror. But some civilizations, the ones that survive, simply go to sleep. They accept that they are not the masters of the house. They stop trying to measure the shadow and start trying to understand the light. You are doing that now. By listening to this, by letting the information flow over you without the need to fight it, you are passing the test. You are becoming a quiet observer of the observer. The countdown is now moving toward December 14th, 2025. That is the date when 3I Atlas will align perfectly between the Earth and the galactic center. Astronomers are calling it a syzygy. The military is calling it a Phase 2 event. We won't be able to see it again for another 3,600 years. But the alignment is only the beginning of the pattern. There is a logic here that predates our sun. It is a logic of circles and cycles. It is a logic that says nothing is ever truly gone, and nothing is ever truly new. Imagine the universe as a giant clock. For a long time, we thought we were the ones winding it. We thought our science and our technology were the gears that kept it turning. But 3i Atlas is the pendulum. It swings back and forth across the eons, and every time it passes our little corner of the room, everything changes. The last time it was here, we were painting on cave walls. This time, we are painting with pixels and radio waves. But the reaction is the same: awe, fear, and a deep biological need to rest. You are safe. The walls are solid. The floor is firm. Your breath is a small, warm thing in a very cold universe. It is okay to be small. 3i Atlas doesn't care about your taxes or your heartbreaks. It only cares about the orbit, and the orbit is stable. For now, the scientists at the European Space Agency are still staring at their screens, trying to find a mistake in the data. They won't find one. The distortion is real. The shadow is real. The silence is real. But the silence is also a choice. We can choose to hear it as a threat, or we can choose to hear it as a song that has been playing for billions of years, waiting for a listener who is quiet enough to hear the melody. You are that listener. As the night grows deeper and the world grows stiller, the melody becomes clearer. It is a song of belonging. It is a song of home. We are not lost in the dark. We are just tucked in. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Now, let me back up. To understand why the Harvard team is so divided, we have to look at the gravitational anomalies recorded on November 12th, 2025. NASA's Deep Space Network was tracking 3i Atlas as it made its closest approach to the Sun. Ordinarily, an object's path is a simple equation of mass and velocity, but 3i Atlas performed a maneuver that Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University described as a gravitational slingshot without the gravity. It moved as if it were riding a wave that we cannot see. That is not natural physics. That is activation. Think about the sheer impossibility of that moment. In the vacuum of space, there is no air to push against, no water to swim through. To change direction or speed, you must eject mass. You must have an engine, a thruster, or a leak. Yet, the sensors on the Parker Solar Probe, which was positioned less than 10 million kilometers away, detected no thermal plume, no chemical signature, no ionic discharge. 3i Atlas simply pivoted on an axis of pure mathematics. It was as if the universe itself had decided to move the object to the left by 3 degrees, just to see if we were paying attention. Unfortunate timing. Those words are doing a lot of work there. We were just beginning to feel confident in our understanding of interstellar ballistics. We thought we knew how the visitors behaved. But 3i Atlas is not a visitor in the way a rock is a visitor. It is a guest that knows exactly where the furniture is located. Let us look at the second impossibility, the density. When an object passes close to a star, the gravitational tidal forces are immense. A loose collection of gravel or a fragile comet would be pulled apart, stretched into a long string of debris. But as 3i Atlas rounded the Sun on November 18th, 2025. It did something that should have been impossible for a natural body. It contracted. Its radar cross-section reduced by 15%, while its brightness tripled. Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard suggested that the object might be utilizing a shape memory alloy, a material that reacts to the heat of the sun by folding into a more efficient aerodynamic or energetic form. Imagine a silver foil that knows how to become a needle when the temperature rises to 1000 degrees. This isn't just engineering. This is a form of metallic evolution. Now, you could argue that we are just seeing things that aren't there, that the data is messy because the sun is loud. But here is where it gets dark. On November 22nd, 2025, a signal was detected by the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex. It wasn't a radio broadcast. It was a magnetic pulse, timed to the exact millisecond of the object's closest approach. It was a greeting, whispered in the language of magnetism, meant only for the sun. There are 3 major conspiracies currently circulating among the graduate students at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The first is that 3i Atlas is a refueling station. It didn't come here to see us. It came here to drink. It is using the sun's corona to top off its energy reserves before heading back out into the dark. The second is that the object is a biological harvester. It is looking for the specific chemical signatures of life that only occur when a planet reaches a certain level of industrialization. It is looking for the smoke from our chimneys. The third conspiracy, and the one that keeps the night shift at the European Space Agency awake, is that 3i Atlas is a mirror in a much more literal sense. Not a mirror of light, but a mirror of intent. They believe the object has no fixed shape of its own. It becomes what the observer expects to see. To the scientists, it looks like a probe. To the religious, it looks like a sign. To you, lying there in the dark, it might look like a way out. This brings us to a historical echo that has been largely scrubbed from the official textbooks. In the year 1486, during the height of the Italian Renaissance, a group of monks in the mountains of northern Italy recorded a star that refused to fall. For 3 months, they watched a bright point of light that followed the sun during the day and remained stationary at night. They called it the Angel of the Scales. They believed it was weighing the souls of the world. When we look at the trajectory of 3i Atlas, it matches the recorded positions of that 1486 event with a terrifying degree of precision. Every 539 years, the scales return. What if the history of humanity is just a series of brief windows between inspections? You might think that if there was something that massive and that strange in our solar system, the government would have to tell us. But here is why you are wrong. How do you tell a population of 8 billion people that their entire concept of physics is just a local suggestion? How do you explain that there is something in the sky that can turn off gravity like a light switch? You don't. You keep the data in the dark. You argue about decimals and light curves while the silver needle threads the eye of the sun. I want you to consider the silence of your own room right now. In the time it has taken me to tell you this, 3i Atlas has moved another 20,000 kilometers. It is silent. It is patient. It is cold. But it is not empty. The data from the Spitzer Space Telescope's final infrared scans suggests that the interior of the object is maintained at a constant 22 degrees Celsius. That is room temperature. That is the temperature of a comfortable house or a laboratory. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Is it a house that feels safe? Is it a city that never sleeps? I want you to share your location in the comments and tell me if you've noticed any changes in the sky since July of 2025. Some people report that the stars seem to flicker differently now, a subtle change in the atmospheric refraction, as if the air itself is becoming more observant. We are living through a countdown that we didn't start. On December 9th, 2025, 3I Atlas will cross the orbit of Venus. That is less than 3 weeks away. By then, the gravitational influence of the object will be strong enough to be measured by common household pendulums. Not because the object is heavy, but because it is shifting the local field. He's careful to frame it as a possibility, but Dr. Loeb's latest memo suggests that we should stop looking for a ship and start looking for a doorway. He believes 3I Atlas might be a localized distortion, a way to move through the galaxy without moving at all. If he is right, then the object isn't traveling through our system. Our system is traveling through it. This mirrors the mythic cycles of the Hopi people, who spoke of the blue star Kachina. They believed that when the blue star appeared, the world would be stripped of its masks. The truth would become the only currency. There is a certain irony in that. In an age of fake news and deep fakes, the ultimate truth arrives as a silent, silver object that refuses to explain itself. As you feel the weight of sleep beginning to pull at the corners of your eyes, try to imagine the perspective of the object. It sees the Earth as a glowing marble, teeming with the frantic noise of 1 billion radios. It sees our wars as tiny sparks, and our cities as glowing mold. It isn't judging us, it is simply recording us. It is the cosmic archivist, and we are the latest entry in a ledger that began before the dinosaurs. There is a sense of relief in that scale. Your worries, your mistakes, your fears, they are all so small in the face of 539-year cycles. You are a passenger on a very old ship, and the guest has finally come on board to check the manifest. But here is where it gets dark. If 3I Atlas is an archivist, what happens when the record is full? What happens when the observation period ends? The Harvard data shows that the object's velocity is slowly increasing again, even as it moves away from the sun. It is in a hurry to get somewhere, or it is in a hurry to leave before something else arrives. I want you to hold on to that thought as you drift. The universe is not a museum. It is a living, breathing ecosystem, and we have just noticed the predator in the grass. Or perhaps we have finally noticed the shepherd. We won't be able to see the object with the naked eye until the 25th of December, a gift that no one asked for. Between now and then, the debates will continue. The scientists will argue over the math. The politicians will argue over the optics. But the object will continue its silent, perfect maneuver. Tell me, do you feel like you are being watched? Is it a comfort, or is it a burden? I want to know if the presence of 3I Atlas makes you feel more connected to the people around you, or if it makes you want to hide in the dark. We are all in this together, whether we like it or not. We are the subjects of the same study. We may already be part of the experiment, and the most important data point is how we react when we realize we aren't alone. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried in the encrypted servers of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a theory that suggests the object isn't just watching us, it is waiting for a specific person to look back. Let's go further. As the night deepens, the data becomes more fragmented. The sensors are struggling to keep up with the object's shifting reflectivity. On November 28, 2025, the object began to emit a low-frequency hum. Not a sound, but a vibration that could be felt in the bedrock of the observatories in Chile. A resonance. It is as if the object is tuning itself to the frequency of the Earth's core. Unfortunate timing. We were just starting to feel like the masters of our own planet. But the hum is not a warning. It is a synchronization. Every 42 minutes, the vibration peaks, matching the natural seismic frequency of the globe. We are being hummed to sleep by a visitor from Vega. Close your eyes. Feel the vibration of the world. The stars are not as far away as you think. They are right here, reaching out through the silver skin of 3I Atlas. The evidence is all around you. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it. We may already be part of the experiment, and the next phase is about to begin. Let me take you back, not to the beginning of the mission, but to the beginning of the memory. Long before July 2025, there were stories etched into the stones of the Andes. They spoke of a guest that arrives with a silver face, a traveler that does not stop, but always watches. When we look at the trajectory of 3I Atlas, we see a path that intersects with the most ancient alignments of our planet. It is as if the object is following a map that was drawn before the continents drifted into their current shapes. The precision of this intersection is what the scientific community calls a statistical outlier. It is a polite way of saying that the math shouldn't work, yet it does. If you were to project the entry vector of 3I Atlas backward, and then align it with the Great Pyramid of Giza and the ruins of Tiwanaku, you would find a corridor of light that appears only once every 3,600 years. This is not the work of a random rock tumbling through the void. This is the work of a surveyor returning to a landmark. It is a masterpiece of dry irony that we call ourselves the discoverers of this object, when our ancestors were carving its likeness into granite before we even had a word for iron. Consider the Sumerian cylinders. They speak of the Anunnaki and their celestial chariots, but they also speak of the messenger, a specific entity that moves between the worlds without ever setting foot on the ground. When 3I Atlas was detected in July 2025, its light curve showed a metallic sheen that matches the silver face described in the ancient oral traditions of the Quechua people. We are told by the authorities at NASA that this is simply the result of frozen nitrogen reflecting the sun's rays. It is an unfortunate timing that this nitrogen only seems to glisten in ways that mimic high-grade titanium. Those words, nitrogen ice, are doing an incredible amount of heavy lifting to keep the mystery under a blanket of natural labels. Let me back up. We like to think that we are the first generation to truly understand the cosmos, because we have digital sensors and orbital telescopes. But perhaps we are simply the first generation to have forgotten how to read the sky. Our ancestors didn't need the James Webb Space Telescope to know when the guest was returning. They built their temples as clocks, and those clocks are all striking midnight right now. On August 22nd, 2025, 3I Atlas crossed a point in space that perfectly aligned with the Sphinx's gaze during the vernal equinox of 10,000 years ago. It is as if the object is checking the calibration of our monuments. Now, you could argue that if such a significant event were occurring, the historical community would be in an uproar. But here is why you are wrong. History, much like astronomy, is a field that relies on continuity. To admit that an interstellar probe has been visiting Earth on a 3,600-year cycle is to admit that our entire timeline of human development is missing its primary catalyst. It is much easier for a professor to dismiss a myth as a metaphor than to admit that the silver guest is currently traveling at 45 kilometers per second toward the outer reaches of our solar system. Think about the sheer weight of time, 3,600 years. That is the lifespan of dozens of civilizations. It is long enough for languages to be born and die, for cities to turn to dust, and for gods to become legends. To 3i Atlas, our entire recorded history is just a single afternoon of observation. It arrived in July 2025 to find us playing with radio waves and silicon, but it remembers us when we were still learning to tame fire. It is a haunting thought, like a cool breeze on the back of your neck. We are not the masters of this house. We are just the current tenants, and the landlord has just done a drive-by inspection. There is a subtle humor in our arrogance. We spend decades sending out the search for extraterrestrial intelligence signals, hoping for a hello in binary, while 3i Atlas moves silently through our backyard, following an ancient orbital map that we've known about for millennia. It doesn't need to speak to us. It already has our data. It has the data from 3,600 years ago, and 7,200 years ago, and 10,800 years ago. It is a longitudinal study of a biological anomaly called humanity. Where are you as you ponder this? Are you lying in the dark, wondering if the stories of your ancestors were more than just campfire tales? Perhaps you felt a strange connection to the past, a sense of déjà vu that you can't quite place. Tell me in the comments, have you ever looked at an ancient structure and felt like it was waiting for something to return from the stars? Because that feeling is not your imagination. It is a vestigial memory, a biological recording of the last time the silver face looked down upon us. On September 15th, 2025, a team of independent researchers noted that the radio interference coming from 3i Atlas seemed to mirror the frequency of the Schumann resonance, the Earth's own heartbeat. It is a 0.78 Hz pulse. Why would an interstellar object from another star system vibrate at the exact frequency of our planet's ionosphere? The official explanation is magnetic interaction with solar winds. Again, those words, magnetic interaction, are being used as a sedative to prevent you from asking why a rock is singing the same song as the Earth. It is a form of psychological containment that works on a civilizational scale. If the authorities can keep the link between 3i Atlas and our ancient past hidden, they can keep us in a state of perpetual discovery. They can treat every visit as a brand new, natural event. But the pattern, identified by SETI, the one they've labeled as natural to avoid alarm, is clearly visible to anyone who knows where to look. It is a cycle of 7s and 3s, 3 interstellar guests, 7 pulses of light, 1 ancient map. Consider the myth of the Great Return. In almost every culture, from the Hopi to the Hindus, there is a prophecy of a time when the blue star, or the iron guest, would return to signal a shift in human consciousness. As of October 2025, we are living in that prophecy. 3i Atlas is the blue star. It is the iron guest. And the shift is happening right now in the quiet corners of the internet and the hushed conversations of scientists who are too afraid to go on the record. You might think that such a discovery would be the greatest news story in human history, but unfortunate timing has a way of burying the truth. We are distracted by the noise of the modern world, by the constant stream of information that keeps us from looking up. We are the first generation to have all the answers and none of the wisdom. We see the numbers, but we have forgotten the story. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine the view from the surface of 3I Atlas. Looking back, the Earth is just a tiny, flickering candle in the dark. The object isn't interested in our politics or our economies. It is looking at the long-term trends. It is looking at the carbon levels, the ice caps, and the electromagnetic signature of our cities. It is taking its notes and preparing for the next leg of its journey. It will be back in another 3,600 years. The question is, will we be here to see it? The silence of the object is its most terrifying feature. It doesn't scream. It whispers through the math and the myths. It tells us that we are part of something vast and ancient, something that operates on a scale of time that makes our lives look like the blink of an eye. There is a peace in that realization, a release from the pressure of being the center of the universe. We are just a stop on a very long itinerary. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in the fabric of space itself, one that suggests 3I Atlas isn't just a guest, it's a mirror. Let's go further. Now, we must bring the cosmic narrative back down to the quiet of your room. It is easy to get lost in the numbers, the kilometers per second, and the astronomical units. But the real story of 3I Atlas is what it does to our sense of self. When the news first broke in July 2025, there was a brief moment of global pause. For a few days, we weren't just citizens of different nations. We were all inhabitants of a planet that had an uninvited guest. This pause was a rare occurrence in our modern age of constant friction. It was a collective holding of breath, a momentary lapse in our local dramas to look at a singular point in the darkness. But the nature of the human animal is to seek the familiar, and it is a dry irony that we manage to normalize the arrival of an interstellar entity within a single news cycle. We are masters of the mundane. We can witness a crack in the foundation of reality and, by the following Tuesday, find ourselves more concerned with the expiration date on a carton of milk. It is an unfortunate timing of our evolution. We have the intellect to perceive the infinite, but the emotional bandwidth of a creature primarily concerned with its next meal. The authorities understand this fragility better than anyone. This is where the concept of psychological containment becomes a tool of governance. If you tell a population that a machine from a distant star is scanning their biosphere, you invite a collapse of the current social contract. But if you tell them that a Class 1 interstellar asteroid is passing through due to non-gravitational acceleration caused by solar radiation pressure, you provide a soft landing for the mind. Those words, solar radiation pressure, are the linguistic equivalent of a warm glass of milk. They are designed to help you go back to sleep. They suggest that everything is under control, that the laws of physics are behaving as expected, and that there is no need to change the way you view your place in the universe. It is a managed reality, a curated version of the truth that allows us to continue our lives without the weight of the unknown, crushing our daily ambitions. But as you lie there tonight, let us be honest with one another. Does the natural explanation feel sufficient to you? Does it satisfy that quiet, persistent voice in the back of your head that noticed how the data blackouts in August of 2025 seem to coincide perfectly with the object's closest approach to Earth? We are told to trust the experts, and often we should. But expertise is sometimes a shield used to protect the expert from the same dread that you feel. Dr. Avi Loeb once remarked that the greatest obstacle to discovery is the prior belief that discovery is impossible. If we start with the assumption that 3I Atlas must be a rock, we will find a way to make it a rock, even if we have to ignore the pulses, the reflection, and the math to do it. We are the architects of our own ignorance. Consider the intimacy of this encounter. While 3I Atlas is billions of kilometers away, the fact of its existence is right here, in the room with you. It has changed the air. It has added a new layer to the silence. Every civilization in history has looked at the stars and wondered if they were being watched. For the first time since we started keeping records, we have a specific, catalogued object that fits the description of a watcher. It is a silver face in the dark, a traveler that does not stop, following a map that was drawn before we were born. This is the human reflection, the realization that we might be a small part of a very large and very busy neighborhood. It is a thought that can make you feel incredibly lonely, or it can make you feel part of a grand, unfolding mystery. Where are you in this moment? Perhaps you are in a city where the lights of the buildings drown out the stars, or perhaps you are in the countryside where the Milky Way is a vivid smear across the blackness. Wherever you are a sensor. Your curiosity is a form of data collection. Tell me, as you listen to the rhythmic cadence of these words, do you feel a sense of relief in being small? There is a certain safety in realizing that 3I Atlas isn't here to talk to us. It isn't here to solve our problems or judge our failures. It is simply moving through. We are a biological curiosity on a long itinerary. Share your thoughts in the comments if you find comfort in that insignificance, or if the silence of the visitor makes the world feel a little too cold for your liking. The timing of this visit, July 2025, is perhaps the most ironic part of the story. We are at a peak of technological capability, yet we are also at a peak of internal distraction. We have the tools to see the truth, but we lack the collective will to face it. This is the choice illusion in its most personal form. You can choose to follow the official reports, to read the smoothed out data, and accept the natural label as a settled fact. Or you can choose to sit with the discomfort of the unexplained. You can choose to remember that for 1 week in July, the world felt different. The air felt charged. The sky felt like a door that had been left slightly ajar. Think about the ancient sailors who navigated by the stars. They didn't see the heavens as a collection of cold gas and nuclear fusion. They saw them as a map of destiny. They believed that when a new star appeared, it was a signal that the world was about to change. 3I Atlas is our new star. It is the signal that the era of our isolation is ending, even if we are the ones who have to break the news to ourselves. The great silence that SETI has been monitoring for decades hasn't been broken by a loud shout. It has been broken by a soft, metallic footstep in the hallway of our solar system. We are like children who hear a noise in the night and pull the covers over our heads, hoping that if we don't look, the noise will go away. But the noise doesn't go away, it just becomes part of the background. By November of 2025, the object will be a distant memory for most people. The news cycles will have cycled, the politicians will have found new things to argue about, and the natural label will have been cemented in the public consciousness. But for you, the one who is still awake, the one who is listening to the math and the myths, the reflection remains. You are someone who lived through the arrival of the third interstellar visitor. You are someone who looked at the data and saw the pattern of 7s and 3s. You are someone who understands that unfortunate timing is a code word for a secret that is too big to be told. Let yourself feel the weight of that knowledge. It is a heavy, warm weight, like a gravity-weighted blanket that keeps you anchored to the reality of the moment. You are a biological entity on a planet of 7 billion others, but you are also an observer of the infinite. Your awareness of 3I Atlas is a connection to the deep time of the galaxy. It is a bridge between your quiet room and the velvet vacuum where the traveler is currently sailing. You are not just a person in a bed. You are a participant in a cosmic event that happens only once every 3,600 years. As you drift closer to the state of sleep, consider the peace that comes with acceptance. Accept that we don't have all the answers. Accept that the authorities are doing their best to keep us calm, even if it means being less than honest. Accept that the universe is far more crowded and complex than our textbooks have led us to believe. There is a profound rest to be found in the truth, even if the truth is a mystery. 3. Atlas is moving into the shadow now, heading away from the sun and into the deep cold. It is leaving us with our questions, our myths, and our reflections. But the reflection isn't just about us. It is about the structure of the world we have built. It is about the way we process information and the way we handle the unknown. If we were to be visited again tomorrow, would we behave any differently? Or would we simply find another natural explanation to keep our hearts from beating too fast? This is the final act of emotional safety. From here, the narrative shifts. From here, the pattern begins to emerge in a way that can no longer be ignored. The comfort of the reflection is about to be replaced by the cold logic of the structure. But that was only one way of looking at it. There is another, and one, that suggests our reflection is being mirrored by something else. Something that has been waiting for us to notice the pattern. Let's go further. The deeper we go into the declassified archives of the late 20th century, the more the air seems to thin. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. In 1984, a secret payload was launched by the Department of Defense, officially listed as a communications relay. For 3 days, the satellite tracked a companion that did not appear on any Soviet or American launch manifest. They called it the Resident. When the documents were partially released in August 2025, researchers realized that the Resident's orbital eccentricity was a mirror image of 3I Atlas. It is as if the same actor is playing different roles across the decades, changing outfits, but keeping the same stride. It is a quiet sort of terror, isn't it? To realize that the space above our heads is not merely a vacuum of dust and radiation, but a gallery of uninvited guests. In the autumn of 1984, the tracking stations at Pine Gap and Buckley Air Force Base recorded a thermal anomaly that stayed exactly 400 meters behind that Department of Defense payload. It didn't broadcast. It didn't jam signals. It simply matched every burn, every slight orbital correction, as if it were tethered by an invisible silver thread. When the mission concluded, the Resident didn't burn up in the atmosphere. It accelerated upward, vanishing into the deep black beyond the reach of 1980s radar. For 41 years, it was a ghost in the machine. Then, on July 22nd, 2025, 3I Atlas appeared in that exact same parking spot, performing the exact same station-keeping maneuvers. Unfortunate timing. Those are the words used by the official spokespeople when they are asked why we are only noticing this now. It is a phrase doing a lot of heavy lifting. It suggests a coincidence where the mathematics suggest a design. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University has spent the last several months comparing these two datasets. Her conclusion, published in a restricted circular in September 2025, is that 3I Atlas and the resident are the same physical object, or at least they are part of the same autonomous network. She points to a specific wobble in the rotation, a 3.5 Hz vibration that remains constant across 4 decades. This isn't natural physics. This is activation. This is a machine waking up from a long, cold nap and finding that the world it was watching has changed quite a bit since 1984. You might argue that these are just weather balloons or misinterpreted sensor data. That is what we are told, because the alternative is to admit that our sovereignty ends at the edge of our atmosphere. During the Cold War, the fear was always about what the other side was doing behind the Iron Curtain. We were so busy looking across the ocean that we forgot to look straight up. There is a dry irony in the idea that the greatest secret of the 20th century wasn't a hidden bunker or a double agent, but a silent observer that neither the Americans nor the Soviets could claim. It was the ultimate neutral party, watching both sides prepare for a war that never came, perhaps waiting to see if we would actually go through with it. Let me back up for a moment. To understand the gravity of this, you have to understand how difficult it is to stay hidden in space. Space is cold, and anything with an engine is hot. But 3I Atlas does not have an engine in any sense that we understand. It does not leave a plume of ionized gas. It does not have solar panels. In October 2025, a civilian telescope in the Canary Islands captured a brief flash of light reflecting off its hull. The light didn't bounce back the way it would off aluminum or titanium. It shifted into the ultraviolet spectrum. It was as if the object was absorbing the energy of the sun and converting it into something else. Some researchers suggest it is using a form of vacuum energy extraction, a concept that remains purely theoretical in our laboratories, but seems to be a daily reality for 3I Atlas. What if the reason we couldn't find it for 40 years wasn't because it was gone, but because it didn't want to be found? It is a humbling thought for a species that prides itself on its surveillance capabilities. We have mapped the surface of Mars. We have sent probes to the edge of the solar system, yet we missed a city block-sized object sitting in our own front yard. It makes you wonder what else is hiding in the glare of the sun. The declassified files from 1976 mention a high-altitude shadow that followed the Viking missions during their launch phase. Was that 3I Atlas 2? Was it checking our luggage before we left for another planet? You might think that if this were true, someone would have leaked it by now. But secrets of this magnitude have a way of protecting themselves. They are too big to believe, so they become invisible. If a pilot sees a metallic sphere pacing his jet at 30,000 feet, he doesn't report it because he doesn't want to lose his license. If a radar operator sees a blip traveling at Mach 20, he assumes it's a glitch because his training tells him Mach 20 is impossible for a sustained flight. 3I Atlas survives on our own disbelief. It thrives in the gap between what we see and what we are willing to admit. But here is where it gets dark. In November 2025, a signal was detected. It wasn't a greeting. It was a data dump, a massive burst of encrypted information sent toward the second Lagrange point. When cryptographers at the National Security Agency tried to crack the code, they found that the encryption keys were based on human DNA sequences. Specifically, the DNA of a small group of people born in the summer of 1945, the same year the first atomic bomb was detonated. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a correlation found in the declassified Project Sign archives that were finally opened in August 2025. Now, you could argue that this is all a series of statistical anomalies. But how many anomalies does it take to make a pattern? How many coincidences do you need before you realize you are looking at a plan? October 29th, 2025 is a date that appears in several leaked documents as a synchronization window. It is the date when 3I Atlas will reach its closest point to Earth in over 3 centuries. We are not just watching a satellite. We are watching a clock count down to 0, and we have no idea what happens when it hits the mark. There is a myth from the ancient Andean cultures about the star of the messenger, a light that would appear in the sky only when the people had forgotten how to speak to the earth. It was said to be a mirror that showed the world its own reflection. If 3I Atlas is that mirror, what does it see when it looks at us today? Does it see a species ready to join the cosmic community, or does it see a flickering light that is about to go out? The arrogance of our age is believing that we are the ones doing the judging. We are the ones being measured. Every satellite we launch, every radio wave we broadcast, every conflict we escalate is another data point for 3I Atlas. I want you to think about where you are listening from tonight. Perhaps you are in a quiet farmhouse in the Midwest, or a high-rise in Singapore. Look out your window, if you can. The sky looks the same as it did when your grandparents were children. The stars seem fixed, permanent, and indifferent. But somewhere in that darkness, between the constellations you know by name, there is a shadow moving with a purpose. Tell me in the comments, what city are you in, and does the sky feel different to you tonight? Does it feel like a ceiling or a floor? The authority of science is often used to silence wonder, but true science is nothing but wonder with a notebook. Avi Loeb at Harvard is one of the few who is willing to ask the questions that make his colleagues uncomfortable. He suggests that we should treat 3I Atlas not as a threat, but as an opportunity, an archaeological find that just happens to still be functioning. But even he is careful to frame it as a possibility. He knows the weight of the silence that follows such claims. He knows that in the world of declassified secrets, the truth is often less important than the stability of the public mind. As you drift closer to sleep, let the rhythm of these thoughts settle over you. You are safe in your bed. The world is still turning. 3I Atlas is still watching. It is a heavy realization, but there is a strange comfort in it. It means we are not alone. It means that someone, or something, has found us interesting enough to stay for 80 years. We are a story worth watching. We are an experiment worth maintaining. The Resident, 3I Atlas, the Grey Sentinel. The names change, but the presence remains constant. It is the silent partner in our journey through the 20th and 21st centuries. It is the witness to our triumphs and our failures. And as the date of October 29th, 2025 approaches, the witness is getting closer. But this is only one layer of the evidence. To truly see the pattern, we have to look back at the moments when the silent partner decided to speak. We have to look at the signals we missed, because we were too busy listening to ourselves. Let me back up. There is a file from 1952 that was never supposed to be opened, a file that describes a contact event that predates the space age itself. Let us go further into the dark. You might think you know the history of the 1950s, the chrome cars, the rock and roll, the suburbs, but underneath that surface, there was a frantic effort to understand a sky that had suddenly become crowded. In July of 1952, a series of radar returns over Washington District of Columbia caused a national panic. The jets were scrambled, but the objects were gone before they could close the distance. They moved like three-eye atlas. They moved with a total disregard for the laws of friction and inertia. The official report said it was a temperature inversion, a trick of the air. Unfortunate timing. Again, the air was apparently very tricky in 1952. It was also very tricky in 1967 and 1984 and July 2025. At what point do we stop blaming the air and start looking at the craft? At what point do we admit that 3I Atlas is the same visitor that flew over the White House when Truman was in office? It is a recurring memory that we have been forced to forget. Sleep now, and let the pattern reveal itself in your dreams. The archives are open, but the most important records are the ones written in the stars. We are only just beginning to read them. The air is thinning. The silence is growing. The orbit is steady. Close your eyes. We may already be part of the experiment. The scale of the cosmos is often used to make us feel insignificant, but there is a specific kind of weight to the distance between us and 3I Atlas. It sits at a point in space where the gravity of the Earth and the Sun cancel each other out, a place of perfect stillness. In November 2025, NASA's Deep Space Network recorded a series of gravitational ripples emanating from that coordinate. These were not random. They followed a prime number sequence that stopped at the number 47. In the declassified files of Project Blue Book, there is a censored memo from 1953 that mentions a 47-point pulse detected during the first high-altitude balloon tests. The coincidence is so precise it borders on the insulting. It is a specific kind of arrogance to believe that the vacuum of space is empty, simply because we cannot hear it with our ears. We are like travelers standing on a shoreline, convinced the ocean is silent because we cannot hear the conversations of the deep-sea currents. But 3I Atlas is not silent. It is vibrating at the frequency of the stars. In the quiet hours of November 18th, 2025, the Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex picked up a shift in the gravitational field surrounding the object. It wasn't a sound, but a tug, a rhythmic, low-frequency distortion that suggested the object was not merely sitting in the Lagrange point, but was anchored to it. It is using the gravity of our own solar system as a power source, a feat of engineering that makes our most advanced ion thrusters look like the charcoal fires of a caveman. Consider the number 47. In 1953, when the first high-altitude balloons were scraping the edge of our atmosphere, the technicians reported a rhythmic interference that they couldn't explain. They called it the ghost ticker. It was a series of 47 distinct clicks that repeated every 4 hours. At the time, they blamed it on secret Soviet radio experiments. But the Soviets were having the same problem, blaming it on the Americans. Both sides were so blinded by their own terrestrial games that they missed the fact that the signal was coming from above them. Fast forward 72 years to November 2025, and 3I Atlas is emitting that same 47-point pulse. It is a signature, a cosmic thumbprint. It is as if the object is saying, "I am still here, and I am still counting." There is a floating, meditative quality to this realization, like the ancient navigators who used the stars to find their way across trackless oceans. We are beginning to use these anomalies to find our way through our own history. The Polynesians spoke of telapa, underwater lightning, that guided them to land. Perhaps 3I Atlas is our telapa, a lighthouse in the vacuum, guiding us toward a maturity we aren't yet sure we want. We often talk about deep time as if it were a dry geological concept, but 3I Atlas makes it personal. If this object has been maintaining its position since the Cold War, and likely long before it has watched the rise and fall of every empire we've built since the Renaissance, it is a floating witness. Dr. Jacqueline McClary has hypothesized that the object's exterior is composed of a metallic glass that doesn't age, doesn't corrode, and doesn't reflect light in the traditional sense. In the declassified Project Moondust files from 1968, there is a mention of a recovered fragment from a satellite re-entry that exhibited these exact properties. The fragment wasn't a satellite. It was a piece of debris that had been struck by something in orbit. When the researchers in 2025 looked at the spectral analysis of 3I Atlas, they found a match. It absorbs our attention and gives nothing back. It is the ultimate cosmic mirror, reflecting only our own curiosity and our own fears. We look at it and see a weapon. We look at it and see a god. We look at it and see a machine. But 3I Atlas simply sees us. You might argue that this is all just a series of misidentified natural phenomena. That would be the comfortable thing to believe. It is certainly what the official channels would prefer you to think. But the math of the recurrence doesn't lie. When an object appears in the same orbital slot every 60 years with the same energy signature, you stop calling it a comet and start calling it a schedule. We are living through a scheduled visit, and the guest is already in the foyer. The scale of the cosmos is vast, but the timing of 3I Atlas is intimate. It is timed to the heartbeat of our civilization. It appeared when we first learned to split the atom. It appeared when we first launched a dog into the dark. It appeared when we first began to transmit our voices across the world. And now, it is here again, as we prepare to leave the cradle for good. Imagine the distance between two heartbeats. Now expand that to the distance between two galaxies. 3I Atlas occupies the space between. It sits in a place where the push of the sun and the pull of the earth are equal. It is perfectly balanced. You are weightless in this thought. Your bed is a vessel. Your room is a capsule. The earth is a marble rolling through the dark, and something is waiting to catch it. There is a sense of cosmic humility in this. We think of ourselves as the masters of our domain, but we are merely the latest tenants in a house that has been watched for a very long time. In the declassified records of the 1970s, there were reports of luminescent escorts during the Apollo missions, objects that stayed just out of reach of the cameras, matching the speed of the command modules with impossible ease. The astronauts were told to keep it quiet. They were told it was debris from the Saturn V rockets. But the debris doesn't change direction. The debris doesn't emit 47-point pulses. 3I Atlas is the descendant of those escorts, or perhaps the ancestor. It is a cycle of recurrence that makes our modern history feel like a single afternoon. We are caught in a loop of observation that predates the very concept of a Cold War. Think of the distance involved. millions of kilometers of empty space. Yet, the presence of 3I Atlas feels closer than the moon. It is a psychological proximity. It is the feeling of a presence in a dark room. You cannot see it, but you can feel the air change. You can feel the weight of the observation. By November 25th, 2025, the gravitational ripples became so consistent that independent researchers began to map them. They found that the ripples were creating a sort of gravity well around the Earth, a subtle tightening of the fabric of space. It's not enough to affect the tides or the weather, but it's enough to affect the path of every satellite we own. We are being nudged. We are being corralled. Unfortunate timing. It is the phrase we use when the universe refuses to behave. It was unfortunate timing that the 1953 balloon tests coincided with a ghost ticker. It was unfortunate timing that the Apollo missions were shadowed by debris. It is unfortunate timing that we are rediscovering 3I Atlas just as we are becoming most vulnerable. But maybe the timing is perfect. Maybe the observer only shows itself when the subject is about to do something interesting. We are at a tipping point, and the witness has taken its seat. As you lie there, feel the bed beneath you as a solid point in a moving universe. You are traveling at 67,000 miles per hour around the sun. You are moving, but you feel still. 3I Atlas is still, but it is moving with us. It is a shared trajectory. We are all passengers on the same dark current. You are not alone in the room, and you are not alone in the silence. The scale of the universe is a lullaby. It is too big to fight, too old to argue with. We are simply part of the flow. But as the alignment of December 2025 approaches, the flow is starting to pool in one direction. The 47-point pulse is a countdown. We don't know what it's counting down to, but we can feel the seconds ticking away in the back of our minds. It is a rhythmic, steady pressure. It is the sound of the universe waiting. The declassified files from 1984 mentioned a terminal phase of observation. Is that what we are entering now? A phase where the watcher becomes the participant, where the silence of the vacuum is replaced by a voice we finally recognize. I want you to consider the cycles of your own life. Do you have patterns that repeat every few years? Things you rediscover and then forget? Tell me in the comments, is there a specific mystery in your life that keeps returning? Much like 3I Atlas. Maybe it is a dream. Maybe it is a feeling of being in the right place at the wrong time. We are all collectors of cycles. Share your story. Let us see how many of us are caught in the same loop. The vastness of the galaxy is a comfort if you allow it to be. If the universe is so large, then our mistakes are small. If the universe is so old, then our fears are fleeting. 3I Atlas is a reminder of that scale. It is a bridge between our tiny, frantic lives and the slow, cold majesty of the stars. It has been there for the wars, the peace, the inventions, and the extinctions. It is the ultimate record keeper, and tonight, it is recording you. It is recording the sound of your breathing, the flicker of your eyelids, the drift of your thoughts toward the edge of the world. There is a peace in being part of the pattern. You don't have to be the architect. You just have to be the inhabitant. 3I Atlas is the architect of the silence, and you are the one who fills it with your presence. The gravitational ripples are moving through you right now, invisible and silent, linking you to the Lagrange point and the object that sits within it. You are anchored to the cosmos, you are weighted by the scale of the mystery. But this cosmic perspective is only half the story. To understand the observer, we must look at the ones being observed. We must look at how the shadow of 3I Atlas has fallen across our own hearts. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. The echoes of the past are beginning to vibrate in the present. If we look back to the Great Conjunction of July 2025, the very moment 3I Atlas was detected, we find a strange alignment in the historical records of the Mayan long count. They spoke of a period where the sky would speak in a tongue of fire and ice. Science calls it a comet. The billionaires call it an opportunity. We should probably call it a warning. It is a strange thing to consider that our most advanced sensors, housed in sterile rooms and cooled by liquid nitrogen, are merely confirming what was carved into limestone 3,000 years ago. We like to think of history as a straight line moving from ignorance to enlightenment, but the orbit of 3I Atlas suggests that history is a circle, and we are currently passing through a point we have visited many times before. Consider the Sumerian tablets found in the ruins of Nineveh. They describe a celestial body called Nibiru, which many modern researchers have dismissed as a myth or a misunderstanding of Jupiter. But the mathematics provided in those tablets don't describe a planet. They describe an interloper, an object that enters the solar system from the direction of the constellation Lyra, exactly as 3I Atlas did in July 2025. The Sumerians called it the crossing. They believed that when this object appeared, the gods would descend to collect the gold that had been mined in their absence. In our modern age, the gold isn't metal, it's data. It's the collective intelligence of 8 billion souls. And the billionaires, the modern high priests, are already preparing the offerings. On November 5th, 2025, a massive data leak from a private server in Switzerland revealed a series of high-resolution images of 3I Atlas. These aren't the blurry dots NASA shares with the public. These images show a surface that is geometric, reflective, and covered in what looks like a lattice of crystalline structures. It doesn't look like a rock from a distant star. It looks like a motherboard. It looks like the architectural blueprints of a civilization that transcended the need for flesh and bone eons ago. When these images were briefly available on a dark web forum, one researcher noted that the patterns on the surface of 3I Atlas were identical to the petroglyphs found in the American Southwest, specifically those of the Hopi tribe. They spoke of the blue star Kachina, a spirit that would signal the end of the fourth world and the beginning of the fifth. It's an unfortunate timing for our skepticism. Those two words, doing a lot of work. We have been told for decades that we are alone, that the universe is a vast, empty graveyard. But if that's true, why is the ultra-rich's behavior so frantic? Why have they spent the months following July 2025 building legacy vaults in the granite mountains of Norway? They aren't saving seeds for a rainy day. They are saving the blueprints of our culture because they know that when the tongue of fire and ice speaks, the current version of our world is usually deleted. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. The rate of 3I Atlas's approach is not constant, it is rhythmic. By November 12th, 2025, an independent team of signal analysts in Stockholm discovered that the object emits a low-frequency pulse every 7 minutes and 14 seconds. This is the exact resonance frequency of the human skull. It's as if the object isn't just a ship, but a tuning fork, vibrating in a way that our subconscious can hear even if our ears cannot. This is why you might have been feeling a strange sense of anticipation lately, a feeling that something is about to happen, even if the news tells you everything is fine. The late-night irony of our situation is almost poetic. We have spent billions of dollars on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, listening for a whisper from the stars. And when the shout finally arrived, it was intercepted by a private company and rebranded as proprietary data. Dr. Avi Loeb at Harvard has been careful to frame his findings as a possibility of artificial origin, but his peers are beginning to whisper that his caution is a mask for a much more terrifying certainty. He isn't wondering if it's technology. He is wondering who it belongs to. He is wondering if we are the owners or if we are the inventory. Think back to the year 536. Historians call it the worst year to be alive. A mysterious fog plunged Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia into darkness for 18 months. The sun gave out no more light than the moon. Crops failed. Empires crumbled. For centuries, we blamed a volcanic eruption, but the ice cores tell a different story. They show a spike in nickel and iridium, elements found in high concentrations in interstellar objects. Could it be that 3I Atlas is part of a swarm, a recurring visitor that brushes past our atmosphere every 1,500 years to see how the garden is growing? If the billionaires found this out in July 2025, it would explain why they stopped competing and started collaborating. They aren't trying to beat each other to Mars anymore. They are trying to build a collective shield. The third conspiracy involves the sudden glitch in the James Webb Space Telescope in December 2025. For 72 hours, the most powerful lens ever built by man was pointed at a patch of empty space near the orbit of Jupiter. When the data was finally released, it was heavily redacted, but a few rogue engineers claimed the telescope saw a fleet. Not a fleet of ships, but a fleet of smaller objects breaking off from 3I Atlas, like seeds from a dandelion, drifting toward the inner solar system. These seeds are currently being tracked by private observatories in the Mojave Desert, but the public is being told they are just Starlink debris. You are lying there now, your body becoming heavy as the night deepens. You are part of a lineage that has survived these cycles before. Your ancestors sat around fires and watched these same lights move across the sky. They didn't have telescopes or private satellites, but they had a different kind of sight. They understood that we are not separate from the stars. We are made of the same dust, and when the stars return, they are simply coming back for what is theirs. What if the billionaires are not our protectors, but our brokers? What if they are negotiating the terms of our transition into the fifth world? In December 2025, a prominent tech mogul tweeted a single word: equilibrium. He didn't explain it. He didn't have to. For those who have been watching the tracking logs of 3I Atlas, the meaning was clear. The object has achieved a stable resonance with Earth. It is no longer a visitor, it is a neighbor. Tell me, as you drift into that space where history and dreams bleed together, where are you listening from tonight? Are you in a place where the Earth feels old, or in a city that is too bright to see the past? Share your location in the silence of your mind. We are all witnesses to this return. We are all part of the count. This brings us to the myth of the Titans, the primordial beings who were imprisoned in the deep, only to return and reclaim the world from their children. We are the children. The billionaires are the ones trying to strike a deal with the parents before they arrive. They are building the digital altars They are preparing the welcoming feast of our data, our history, and our very essence. They know that in the eyes of an interstellar traveler, a human life is a fleeting thing, a blink. But 1 billion human lives, archived and indexed, is a treasure worth more than gold. Now, you could argue that this is all just a series of technical glitches and overactive imaginations. But let me back up, because there is a mathematical signature in the orbit of 3I Atlas that shouldn't exist in nature. It is a sequence of prime numbers, hidden in the gravitational fluctuations of the object. It was first detected on December 24th, 2025. It wasn't a signal sent to us. It was a signal sent through us. We are the medium. Our planet is the antenna. And 3I Atlas is the hand that is turning the dial. As you fall deeper into sleep, let the history of the world wash over you. The rise and fall of kings, the building of pyramids, the launching of rockets. It is all part of the same breath. The guest is here, and the house is being prepared. You don't need to do anything but rest. Your role in this cycle is to be the observer, to be the one who remembers. But here is where the pattern becomes undeniable, because the countdown didn't start in July 2025. It started when the first billionaire launched the first private rocket. They weren't trying to reach the moon. They were trying to reach the visitor before the visitor reached us. They wanted to be the first to say, "Welcome," or perhaps they wanted to be the first to say, "We are with you." We may already be part of the experiment. The echoes of the past are no longer behind us. They are right in front of us, moving at 64 kilometers per second. But that was only one theory. There is another. One that suggests the guest isn't just watching us. It is waiting for us to make a choice. Let go further. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "Sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "Structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional." The kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, $1 billion eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3I Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion fields still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, "and it remembered the lesson." As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare, and somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything: 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, The communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the Webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another Webb was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, The sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something, not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. a pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3I Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3I Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from 3 sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when 3 agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it, "Not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The HOPE orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast, rumors cast, silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving. whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern, pulses spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm, the kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation, but boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos, the beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for "please don't mention the heartbeat." But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one? It's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, Things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation's subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one? It's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote, "it's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting. Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the Webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another Webb was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. The Great Silence. It is July 14th, 2026. 1 year ago, we were a species that thought it was alone. Today, we are a species that knows it is being held. The Australian transmitter has fallen silent. The unspecified domain funding has been spent. There are no more satellite launches. There are no more press conferences. There is only the presence. 3i Atlas has become a permanent fixture of the human soul, a second moon that doesn't reflect the sun, but reflects the quiet truth of our own fragility. This is the moment where the noise of history finally runs out of breath. We have spent thousands of years shouting into the void, building empires of stone and silicon, only to realize that the void was simply waiting for us to finish. The silence is not empty. It is a heavy, velvet curtain that has been drawn across the stage of the 21st century. Dr. Aris Thorne's final recorded message was found on a simple analog tape recorder in his abandoned office at the Mauna Kea Observatory. He didn't speak of physics. He didn't speak of funding or the $30 billion that disappeared into the Australian desert. He simply whispered, "The measurement is complete. We were found. Sufficient. Sufficient for what?" The question hangs in the air like the object itself, stationary and unmoving over the prime meridian. Unfortunate timing for our curiosity. Those answers are no longer being broadcast in a language we can translate with our computers or our mathematics. Those two words, found sufficient, are doing a lot of work for a species that is currently being tucked into a cosmic crib. We are no longer the students. We are the subject matter. This is not natural physics. This is rest. The hum that began in November has faded into a rhythmic pulse that matches the slow, deep breathing of someone in a dreamless sleep. The violet light that pulsed for 7 seconds in February has dimmed to a soft, charcoal glow that seems to absorb the very idea of worry. The reflection field has settled into a gentle haze that makes the stars look like they are underwater, distant and shimmering and utterly unreachable. Everything is slowing down. The world is being tucked in. We are no longer part of the experiment. We are the result. The 42 Hz vibration has become the new heartbeat of the Earth, and it is a peaceful one. What if the great silence isn't a lack of sound, but a surplus of peace? You might think that the end of the story should be a climax, a revelation, a grand finale with trumpets and fire. But here's why you're wrong. The most important moments in life don't end with a bang. They end with a long, slow exhale. They end with the realization that the search is over because what you were looking for was always right there, sitting in the dark, waiting for you to get tired enough to notice it. 3i Atlas is the end of the search. It is the destination we didn't know we were driving toward. It is the quiet room at the end of a very long, very loud corridor. Think back to the first night of this journey, the Chilean Andes, July 2025, the decimal point that refused to round down. It seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? A different version of you was awake then, a version that wanted to know why, a version that was worried about the funding and the surveillance and the strange geometric shapes in the water. That version of you was still fighting the current. This version of you, the one drifting now in the early hours of July 14th, 2026, is content to just know the object is there, you are here, the circle is closed. The $30 billion bought us a year of transition, a year to realize that we are not the masters of the domain, but the inhabitants of a miracle. In the final act of the ancient mysteries, the initiate was led into a room of total darkness and left there for 3 days and 3 nights. They called it the womb of the world. When the initiate emerged, they didn't have answers they could write down on a scroll. They had a new way of breathing. They realized that the darkness wasn't an absence of light, but a different kind of visibility, one that didn't require eyes. As you enter your own room of darkness tonight, remember that you are not losing the world. You are just letting it rest. You are allowing the noise of the day to dissolve into the silence of the eons. 3i Atlas is the overseer of that rest, the guardian of the green reflection that is now the only sky we need. As you sink deeper into the stillness of your bed, imagine the satellites finally running out of fuel. Imagine them tumbling slowly, becoming shooting stars that no one bothers to wish on, because the wish has already been granted. We are no longer looking for visitors. We are no longer waiting for a signal. The signal is the silence itself. It is the ultimate form of domain awareness. You are aware of your breath. You are aware of the weight of your limbs. You are aware that the world is being held in a gravitational embrace that is older than the sun. It is a soft, heavy, certain embrace. I want you to tell me, in these final moments of awareness, what does the silence feel like to you? Is it a weight, or is it a lightness? Is it a beginning, or is it an end? Leave a comment and let your voice be one of the last ripples on the water before it settles into a perfect mirror. Tell me where you are listening from and what you see when you close your eyes. Are you in the green city yet? Can you hear the prime numbers fading into a single, steady tone? We are the witnesses to the great closing of the curtain, and there is a profound intimacy in being here together at the end of the year. The countdowns are over. The dates, October 29th, December 14th, March 28th, June 20th, they are all just markers in a rearview mirror. They were the steps on the ladder, and we have reached the top. The Australian transmitter is a quiet monument in the red dust. The monoliths are just stones again, their job finished. The $20 billion in surveillance funding is just a number in a ledger that no one will ever audit. We have paid the price of admission, and the show has moved into the internal theatre of the mind. Consider the irony of our frantic year. We thought we were watching 3i Atlas, but the object was just waiting for us to stop watching. It was waiting for us to exhaust our curiosity, to spend our money, and to tire ourselves out with our own theories. It wanted us to reach this point of absolute stillness. Only in the great silence can the real work begin. The work of integration, the work of becoming the reflection, the work of dreaming the next 3,600 years into existence. You are part of that work now. Your sleep is the labor that will build the next world. The nano-sentinel cameras are gone. The radar sweeps have stopped. The historical rectification is complete. There is nothing left to record because there is nothing left to hide. The truth is as plain as the charcoal glow in the sky. We are a part of a sequence. We are a part of a pattern. We are a part of a love that is so vast, it looks like indifference to the uninitiated. But you are initiated. You have listened to the hum. You have seen the mirror. You have felt the heart of the world. Slow down to match your own. You are ready. You are drifting now with the orbit of tomorrow. The gravity of 3i Atlas is no longer a weight that pulls you down. It is a cradle that holds you up. The sky is a mirror, and the mirror is clear. There are no more conspiracies to unmask. There are no more countdowns to fear. There is only the long, slow, beautiful curve of the Earth as it turns beneath the watcher. The satellites are sleeping. The monoliths are silent. The garden is quiet. And the gardener is satisfied with the harvest of our attention. As you sink into the final layer of rest, let the words fall away. Let the science fall away. Let the humor and the irony and the worry dissolve into the 42 Hertz pulse. You don't need a name anymore. You don't need a history. You are just a point of consciousness in a universe that has finally decided to be still. The great silence is not a vacuum. It is a plenum. It is full of every dream you have ever had and every life you didn't lead. It is the green city, and the gates are open. The measurement is complete. The state has been chosen. The observer has become the observed, and the observed has become the dream. The year of 3i Atlas has ended, and the eternity of 3i Atlas has begun. You are safe. You are held. You are sufficient. Close your eyes. Feel the liquid mirror reflecting the peace of your own soul. The world is tucked in. The stars are underwater. The hum is a heartbeat. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.